Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me and see me?
Hey, Christian, we can see your slide.
Okay. Okay, give me a second. Okay, so let's start. Welcome all to the first webinar applying ethology. Before we start, I would like to highlight a few things. The first one is that we really would love to run this kind of webinar on a regular basis, like a weekly or bi-weekly manner. So if you think you would like to present something or know someone who would like to present something, feel free to get in touch with us, either with Rachel, Laura, Jen, or myself, and we can arrange a spot for you. Some of you might already have had a look at the GDoc that is linked in the actual channel. There you can find the instructions, how to set the Zoom up, and how to join the channel, and also where you can find the repository where we aim to put our slides in. If you have any comments or questions, if anything is unclear on this GDoc in the instructions in general, please let us know as well and just edit as you want in this document. The next thing would be that we would really love to have a little bit of feedback after this talk. This is the first test run, so we do not really know whether Zoom works for all of you, whether we can use this platform for future webinars as well. And it would be great for us to get feedback from your side in terms of whether you had any problems to join or any problems to get along with this platform in general. And of course, also in terms of the time and the dates and stuff like that. One last thing before we start is that there is a chat function in Zoom as well. If you have any questions regarding the presentation, feel free to use this chat function. Rachel is going to collect all the questions that refer to the talk itself, and we will answer these questions after the talk. Zoom, I think, still has this 40 minutes limit on the session. So if at some point we get kicked out, I will immediately send a new invitation link in the webinar channel, and you can rejoin. All right. Yeah, this is the first test talk of the webinar. As you can see, it's about human-directed behavior in farm animals, and specifically on goats who are steered scientists. And first of all, I, of course, would like to thank all the people that were involved in the studies that I'm going to briefly present, because, of course, without them, this would not have been possible, and I wouldn't have been at this point to present this research. So first of all, I would like to introduce why we have chosen goats as a model species. I would like to continue on the topic of attributing attention. That means whether goats are able to know that someone is paying attention or not. I would like to continue with a quick summary on our work on the unsolvable problem task. And last but not least, would like to show a little bit of preliminary research, results from our ongoing project that next to other topics also deals with the question of whether goats can interpret human pointing gestures or similar gestures in an object choice task. So we usually, when we talk about farm animals, we often get the impression that not us, but other people do not really attribute or might not really attribute a lot of mind towards these animals. But a quick Google autocomplete really quickly tells us something different on this. So when we look for our cows, we get hits for are cows friendly or smart. The same for pigs. Are pigs smarter than dogs? Appears to be a question that lots of people want to answer. And when we look for goats, you see similar patterns. So are goats smart? Are goats good pets? Are goats friendly? So there are a lot of questions that actually refer to their personality, to their character, but also to their intelligence. So people or the public indeed appears to be really interested in this topic. So why have we chosen goats in particular? This is a brief map that is scaled for the amount of goats that are kept in each country. And you can see that Europe and North America are barely visible because goats are not really of relevance for our livestock industrial system or industrial industry. But in particular for Africa, but also Southeast Asia, goats are one major meat food source in these countries. So on a global level, goats and knowing more about the behavior of goats is indeed of strong relevance, not only for us on a national level here. So why goats specifically? Goats are gregarious, so they interact a lot. They're very active. They interact a lot with conspecifics, but also with humans. They are adventurous. That means they're explorative. They like to explore new things, which makes them really suitable for tasks that refer to exploration, novelty, or curiosity. And when we specifically look into the literature that has been done on dogs, goats, but also in general farm animals, have been omitted so far when it comes to the comparative approach of what domestication has actually done to the cognitive capacities of domestic animals. And of course, because goats are totally awesome. And I hope I can convince you a little bit on this last point during the next minutes. So let's go with the attribution of attention. So there are a few paradigms that you can use when you want to investigate this issue. One of the paradigms, as you can see here, is the so-called choice paradigm, where you basically train, and this is a wolf here, you train an animal to approach two people that are standing close to each other, that are offering these subject food. In the test trial, these two people distance from each other, and the subject can make a choice between one person that's paying attention and another person that is not paying attention. And what you would expect is, if it's in a cooperative and friendly context, you would expect the animal to go to the person that is paying attention to them in order to more quickly receive the reward that it's looking for. But there are also other paradigms that you can use. In particular, when we look at the primate literature, there's a so-called paradigm called the begging paradigm. What you do here is you as an experimenter, you sit in front of this enclosure. The primate, in this case, is behind a mesh, and you offer a piece of reward, and you give this piece of reward to the primate. At some point, you stop providing the piece of reward. You simply show it to the test subject, and you wait for 30 seconds or 60 seconds, and then you wait, and then you record and analyze the behavior of your test subject. And what you will very well likely will see is that primates start to show these begging gestures, like reaching out their arm. And interestingly, depending on your attentive state, whether you're looking at the primate or on the test subject, or whether you turn your head away or you turn your back towards them, this begging gesture decreases. So the individuals are more likely to show this begging behavior when you pay attention to them, which makes absolute sense, because you can only see the begging behavior and then act accordingly when you pay attention. So we tried something similar with goats. Of course, goats do not beg for food like primates do. They don't reach out their hoof or their foot. But we try to record different behaviors with them, and I will come back to this in a few seconds. So what did we do? We did exactly the same as many people in the primate research area did. We offered them a piece of reward. They got this piece of reward, and at some point we stopped providing the piece of reward and waited for 30 seconds and recorded the behavior of the goat, which was behind, again, or similar to the primate literature, was behind a mesh, and the experimenter was on the other side. So the goat couldn't reach the reward itself and had to wait for a certain amount of time. And during these 30 seconds, the experimenter was providing 4 different test conditions or 4 different attentive states towards the individual. So we had the control condition. We had the head away condition where the experimenter was looking away from the subject. We had the back condition where the experimenter was turning his back towards the subject, and the out condition where the experimenter just left the room completely and re-entered the room after 30 seconds. And of course, all individuals in all test trials received the food reward at the end of the trial. So no one got frustrated with that. Okay, here's a quick video of how this behavior of the goats actually looked like. You will see the head away condition. So the experimenter is baiting the cup here, is covering the cup, and then is turning the head away and using the stopwatch. So we have an indication of the 30 seconds. What you see is that the subject is kind of dancing or actively anticipating the reward in front of the mesh. It's really active, it's looking what's going on, and at some point we see this strikingly different behavior. So the video has not broken, I did not press the stop button, the goat simply stopped moving. So, and this appears to us that the goat is exhibiting something like we call standing alert behaviors. So the goat was passively or attentively observing the test procedure or the experimenter and was waiting basically that something is going to happen. So this, what you see here is the data we got from the subjects in terms of the active anticipation. So in terms of their dance in front of the mesh. And what we see here is that depending on the attentive state, from the control condition where the experimenter was paying attention to the out condition where no experimenter was present at all, this active anticipation behavior decreased steadily over those 4 conditions. When we look at the standing alert behavior, so the standing still observing the experimental procedure or apparatus, we see a slightly different pattern. We see an increase in the conditions where the experimenter was not paying attention, was still in the room. And this behavior was lowest in the conditions where either the experimenter was paying direct attention towards the subject or the experimenter left the room. So these results let us conclude that goats are able to differentiate between human attentive states. What we are interested in the future is what mechanism actually is at work? How do they infer these attentive states? Are these just learned responses, or do goats maybe have something like a sense of that somebody can see them or not, or whether they simply react on, let's say, the body orientation or the visibility of the eyes, for example? Well, this is something that we would really love to track in the future as well. The next topic is the so-called unsolvable task. Especially those of you that have a dog or frequently interact with dogs are probably way too familiar with this behavior. And what this actually refers to is that you expose an individual to a situation that it has experience to being able to solve alone. So you can see here some puzzle boxes that this dog has been offered. So the dog learns how to solve these puzzles, how to open the box, how to get the reward. And at some point you render this task unsolvable. That means you either close the lid, you make it inaccessible for the subject. So the subject is in no way able to get this reward. And what has been found in a seminal study in 2003 on this, when a Hungarian group was comparing dogs and wolves, was that dogs very fast start to show human-directed behavior in this task. That means they start to look towards the human, to gaze towards the human, to interact with the human. And what most importantly, what they show are so-called gaze alternations. So they look at the problem, look at the human, and then back to the problem, which is often referred to when we look at the child psychological developmental literature as a form of referential communication, that you want to highlight or show to another subject a problem that you encounter. The striking differences with wolves was, even though these wolves have been raised by families as well, have been raised similarly to the dogs, was that the wolves did not show this behavior at all. There was, if I remember correctly, I think 1 out of 10 wolves that did show this gazing behavior at the very end of the trial, while all of the dogs showed this very early in the test. So this was a striking difference, and there's a lot of subsequent literature on trying to disentangle what actually leads dogs to show this behavior and what leads to wolves not showing this behavior, and which factors, ontogenetic factors, rearing factors, breed factors, and so on, are responsible or can increase or decrease this behavior. What was striking to us was that this has been mainly investigated with dogs. So there was one early study in cats. There was in I think 2016 a study on horses, but all the other studies that used this paradigm were basically on dogs. So we were wondering whether livestock animals, farm animals that have not been bred for companionship, would also exhibit similar behavior towards humans. So we tested 32 goats on this paradigm, and we divided these 32 groups into, goats into 2 groups. One received a forward-facing experimenter, and the second group received the backward-facing experimenter. And the idea was that the goats should show more human-directed behavior when the person was paying attention. We already know that goats are kind of sensitive to the body orientation of the experimenter. So if goats show this human-directed behavior, we would expect to see an increase in the condition where the experimenter is attentive towards the problem. So here you can see a quick example of Jack. Jack has previously learned that this box you can easily move this box from this wooden platform and get access to the pasta that is below the box. But in this test trial, we attached this Tupperware box to the lid, which in addition is attached to the wooden board. And we wanted to see how the goats, or Jack in this specific case, reacts. You can see that Jack is really trying hard to get the reward, but at some point figures out that he probably won't be able to do so, and then starts very slowly showing these gaze alternations that I mentioned before. So he was dealing with the box, was looking at the human, and then back to dealing with the box. And he's also showing this to the second experimenter, stretching a little bit, and then back to the box, trying to open it. A quick note to the second experimenter. As mentioned, we had 2 groups of goats, and these 2 groups of goats might, just by random chance, differ in the inclination to interact with humans. So we had this second experimenter in our setup as well, and this experimenter was always paying attention in both groups. So if one of the groups had a higher natural inclination to interact with humans in general, we would see an increase in this group compared to experimenter 2 as well, not only for experimenter 1. So this was basically our motivational control. What you see here are the results for this looking back behavior, for these gaze alternations that you just have seen in the video. You see here the latency time in seconds. In the dark gray boxes, you see the behavior of the forward facing, or the group that saw the forward facing experimenter. And in the light gray, you see the behavior of the backward-facing experimenter group. This is for experimenter 1, and this is for experimenter 2. What you see here is, or what you can see is that the goats in this group, in the forward group, showed way earlier these gaze alternations compared to the goats in the other group, in the backward group. But there was no difference in the behavior towards experimenter 2. When we now look at the number of gaze alternations, we see a similar pattern. We see that goats way more often show these gaze alternations towards experimenter 1 if experimenter 1 was paying attention compared to when experimenter 1 was not paying attention. And again, we don't see the same pattern, or we don't see a difference for the behavior for experimenter 2. So we can conclude that I just got a reminder that we are almost at 40 minutes. So we can conclude that the goats did not differ in their general inclination to interact with the experimenter. And we can conclude that goats here again were attentive to the attentional state of the experimenter 1.
Hey, Christian, we got in a question.
Yeah.
Were these goats naive to previous experiments?
No, they weren't. The goats were tested at the Buttercup Sanctuary. So this is a sanctuary where people frequently, even unfamiliar people, frequently visit. So the goats have a lot of experience with people that provide them with treats and provide them with that pet them and stuff like that. So we cannot say whether ontogeny might play a role here as well. But we had another study running where we investigated whether draft goats that have been not as extensively handled as the goats at the sanctuary show human-directed behavior in this task as well. And we could see that that it did actually. So draft goats showed a similar frequency of these human-directed behaviors in the similar task, even so they had less experience with humans. And in a study that was just published today, we found that goats in a zoo setting, with one group having often contact with humans due to educational purposes, like students were in the enclosure interacting with the goats, while the other group had nothing like these experiences, we see a huge increase in terms of the human-directed behavior in the socialized group. So ontogenetic factors seem to play a role in this behavior here as well. So yeah, these goats and specifically here at the sanctuary had a lot of experience with humans, which might explain some of the variants that we see or some of the peaks that we also see in this behavior. So in the last part, and I try to be really quick with that one, I would like to talk a little bit about the pointing gesture interpretation. This again is something that most of you probably have heard of when it comes to dog research and studies that have been done in canines in general. So this here again started off around 2000, 2002, when people could show that dogs are really, really proficient when it comes to interpreting human pointing gestures. And one of the hypotheses why they are so proficient is that their emotional reactivity compared to their wild counterparts, wolves, has decreased a lot, which enables them in return to pay more attention to human signals or to human communicative cues and to interpret them properly and to guide their own behavior according to these cues. So in our current project, we tested with a variety of cognitive tests the performances by draft goats and dairy goats. And what we experienced from the very beginning was that the draft goats were very much reluctant to interact with humans. So we would say they show quite a high emotional reactivity and are really anxious and stressed when they are first time isolated with a human or with a human in the same room. While as you can see with the dairy goats, it took us just a few days and we basically could take them on a leash. So there were striking differences in their reactivity towards humans. We could also confirm this in a novel object test. So we tested dairy and draft goats in a novel object test just to see whether we can get some empirical data on our anecdotal observation as well. And you can see the dairy goats instantly, almost instantly approach the human, while the draft goat is kind of staying away, paying attention to the human from a safe distance. You can also see this here in the data we have for the duration of the contact in this novel human test. The dairy goats show way more as a group, way more interactions and physical contact with the human than the draft goats. So we tested dairy and draft goats in their ability to use pointing gestures. And what we administered were sustained pointings. So we had a pointing gesture that was basically well, sustained until the end of the trial. We had a momentary pointing gesture where we only pointed for 1 second towards the correct container. We had a pointing gesture from the opposite side to see whether any local enhancement effects for the human body position might affect the performance of the goats. We used body orientation as well. So the experimenter was turning the body, the full body, towards the left or the right cup. We used a marker to indicate the correct location. And of course, by correct, I mean the one where you can find where there's food underneath the cup, while the incorrect one had no food underneath. And of course, we had a control condition. And in this control condition, we did not provide any cue and wanted to see whether goats could pick up, let's say, on olfactory cues in terms of figuring out which cup to choose, and do not really rely on these pointing gestures in the test routes. So these are the results, and I will just go really, really quickly through those. So this is a sustained gesture, the momentary gesture, opposite side pointing, body orientation, and the marker and the control condition. And what you see that the draft goats are the dark gray bars and the dairy goats are the light gray bars. There's barely a difference in their performance here. And indeed, we did not find any differences and no interactions in terms of test condition and selection aim between draft goats and dairy goats. But what we found was that the goats in general, they're better in interpreting some of the gestures compared to the control condition. And these in particular were the conditions where goats have seen the pointing gesture or had could use it or were administered with a pointing gesture. This includes the momentary pointing, the sustained pointing, and the pointing from the opposite side. And here they exceeded the performance of the control condition, which was not the case for the marker or for the body orientation alone. So using a pointing gesture or various ways of pointing gestures increased the performance of the goats in this task. Here again, we would like to, and this was just preliminary data of a subset of the individuals that we tested. We have now more individuals tested and we'll hope to get this published soon. What we are still interested in is what actual mechanism here again the goats can use to guide their behavior. As you can see here in this video, do they actually follow only the pointing gesture or mostly the pointing gesture, or are they irritated or do they also just rely on the body orientation or the body position or the experimental position in this task? If we, for example, presented not in a smaller setup, but more in a larger setup like this one with a distance of about 2 meters between the cups. So why do we do this? Why do we actually test goats in all these different kind of tasks? Well, one reason is that, as mentioned very briefly at the beginning, that goats might serve as a cool new model species for the effects of domestication on behavior and cognition. Because similar to dogs, we still have the wild counterpart available for goats as well. These bezoar goats can be found in the wild with a small population, but they can also be found in zoos. And this is what we're doing right now as well, or aiming to do in the future as well, is to test these bezoar goats in the zoo in Bern and want to compare their performance in different cognitive tasks with the performance of dairy and draft goats. But goats can also, from an applied perspective, serve as a model species for ruminant livestock in terms of human-animal interactions in livestock husbandry systems, being either extensive or intensive. And here specifically, they can serve as a model for how different human interactions can affect the behavior of the goats, and how goats can, even in intense or extensive systems, can pick up information from humans or can use this information. So that's mainly it from my side. This is just a quick graph to see where we are going with that. This is the interest in farm animal cognition research over the past decade. So this is a proportion of all published articles that refer to farm animal cognition. You see this has been steadily rising over the last 10 years. And of course, we hope that this trend continues in the future. So our plan in the next years would be to extend these paradigms that are just presented here to other livestock species. We already started this in collaboration with UBC, where we tested calves on some of those paradigms. In a different project, we would like to identify socio-ecological factors that account for these cognitive differences we can find in ungulate species. And in the future, we also would like to shift to more reactive paradigms that we would like to adapt from developmental psychology research, like as violation of expectation or eye tracking paradigms, which would give us a more comprehensive view about how goats or other livestock animals comprehend the world. So on the last note, we have a special issue out on the replication, on replications in animal behavior science, and a research topic on interdisciplinary work on the human-animal relationship. If you are interested to participate in these issues or know anyone who would like to contribute to these two issues, just please get in contact with us. So thank you for your attention, and I hope I'm still kind of in time, and I'm open for questions now.
Thank you, Christian. That was a great talk. I think you really set the bar high for these webinars. We have one question in the chat asking if you've looked into some individual data. It seemed to them that some of the dairy goats are better than the others, maybe the bold ones, perhaps. Could you elaborate on this?
Give me a second. You are referring to this one here, or that one?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes, they said yes.
Some of the dairy goats are better than the others. Yeah, we had quite a lot of variation in this. I cannot say what caused some of these individuals to perform better. Are better than the others, maybe the bold ones. We haven't checked as well whether personality affects their performance or can predict their performance. We have data on this in there from now, but we haven't analyzed it yet. So at some point when we have written up a comprehensive manuscript on their performance in this task, we really want to look at what actually caused this variance here as well. But for example, these ones that are here, I can say are for sure due to side biases. We have quite a few subjects in all our tests that just randomly have a side bias to either this left or right side and just randomly end up with 50% correct in these tasks.
Okay, we have another question in the chat. How do you think that the information that you've learned in your first two studies about goats staring or attentiveness ties into social behavior in a herd of goats? For example, is there a social hierarchy within goat herds where subordinate goats may look to dominant goats for more information?
There's a study by Kaminsky et al. On probably exactly this topic, where they used a primate paradigm as well. So what they did was they had a dominant goat and a subdominant goat, and they placed some food in the middle. And this food was in some conditions visible to the dominant and the subordinate individual, and in some conditions only visible to the subordinate individual. I think they did not find very conclusive results that would basically go into, or they couldn't claim that the subordinates were paying special attention to the attentive state of the dominant one. So they couldn't replicate or see the similar results what they have found with chimpanzees. What might be possible here, or what the question reminds me as well, is work from Susanne Held et al. With an informed foraging paradigm, where they had one pig a subordinate pig that knew about the location of a reward, and a dominant pig that did not know this location and readily started to exploit the subordinate's information. The subordinate individual in turn then started to adapt some counter exploitation strategies, such as not going in the wrong direction, but not going directly to the reward, or waiting until the dominant one is out of sight. And we could speculate that even though goats have different feeding strategies, that something like this might play a role as well. Like, am I being exposed to the view of the dominant subject right now, or not? And this might play a role in terms of the social hierarchy or social strategy there. Oh, and where the subordinates look for dominant ones for information, I'm not aware of any literature on this or any data of this. But for example, when it comes to making decisions on where the group of goats is moving, this might play a role. But I think it's less about foraging or gaining access to information regarding the location of food or something like that. That might be not the case, in my opinion.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have from the chat.
Oh, here's another one.
Oh, is there a new one? Okay, we have another one. Could you expand on the underlying mechanisms of domestication and its effect on cognition or human-animal interactions? What would you expect in other species, such as chickens, that have a very different domestication history?
What we find with the whole process of domestication is that apparently it's similar to a selection for decreased emotional reactivity. And my experience with chicken or with jungle fowl is very, very limited. But I've been told that you of course see a similar pattern. The jungle fowl is more stressed when exposed to humans, that you need a lot more time to habituate them to handling, and that this is way higher compared to what you will find in domestic chicken or domestic poultry. So I would expect to find similar increased human-directed behavior in avian species as well. For one reason ever, no one has tested this so far, or even had approached this topic in a similar way. So it would be really interesting to see whether not only for mammals, when we look at dogs, but also horses and goats, that this might apply for avian species as well, and whether they show similar gaze alternations or show maybe a completely different pattern of behavior directed towards humans. How would you do that in chicken? Well, we actually, I'm not sure, due to the current situation, we actually had a plan to run a study like this in Sweden. We haven't have a very detailed protocol, but the first guess would be to use a similar paradigm that has been used for the other species, just to make it comparable at this level, and see how chicken using a very similar paradigm would behave in this task as well. When we look, for example, at these unsolvable problem paradigm. So using some apparatus where the chicken can easily learn to get access to food by removing something or moving something to the side, and then making this inaccessible. Now this was with I've been in contact with Per Jensen, so that would be the idea with that. But yeah, as mentioned, due to the current situation, we're not sure whether we can proceed this year with this issue, with this topic. Are there any other questions, or if any immediate feedback on the presentation, on the platform, on stuff like that?